Okay. Welcome everybody to this month's Dinner with a Doc. I am so excited that you are here. My name is Dawn Hutchins and I'm the owner of a company called Veggie Cooking. So I'm a plant-based chef and I kind of consider myself a plant-based lifestyle expert, I would say. And my co-host is Heather Borders.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I can't believe August is about done. I am Heather Borders. I am a registered dietitian with Kylo Nutrition, also in Jacksonville. And I just am super excited about today. It's just so important. And we're really, really excited to have Dr. Dawn Mussellum of Mayo Clinic with us today. So thank you, Dawn, for being here. We're very excited to pick your brain.
Oh, I'm so excited. There's never a more exciting moment than sitting down with patients one-on-one versus when I get to sit down with a group or talk to a group about nutrition and living healthy and primary prevention of breast cancer. So this is terrific. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, yes, we are so glad you're here. So I'll give everybody a little bit of a background and then I'll have you expand on that just a little bit. So Dr. Mussallem is double board certified, including a board certification in lifestyle medicine. She has over 25 years of experience working with patients, specializing in breast medicine, integrative oncology, and cancer prevention. In 2015, she founded the Integrative Medicine and Breast Health Program at Mayo Clinic and is the program director for Lifestyle Medicine Residency Training, that's a mouthful, with the American College of Lifestyle Medicine that teaches medical residents across the Mayo Clinic enterprise, the pillars of lifestyle medicine. So not only does she work with breast medicine patients, she is a stage 4 cancer survivor herself and a heart transplant recipient. So she is aware of what patients are going through for sure. So welcome, Dawn. We're so glad that you're here.
Oh, thank you both, Dawn and Heather, for having me. Like I said, I'm really excited. And, going through what I've gone through as a patient taught me so much, about life. And even prior to that, I was so excited and interested in healthy living. Like at a young age of 4, I really did set out to say, oh, I want to be a doctor. I want to live to be 100. And I want to figure out how I can be super healthy. And what really inspired me, it sounds silly, is the Today Show. Willard Scott, he had that Smucker's jar 100th birthday celebration. And as a little girl, I would see that. And I thought those 100-year-old people were so cool and vital. And it's the weirdest story, but here I set out to be super healthy. So I have been living a really healthy lifestyle pretty much my whole life. My parents really upheld a healthy lifestyle. In fact, my last patient before I joined this call, she had read my story and she goes, it's so cool that you lived and ate healthy your whole life. I have some people say, well, then how did you get cancer? And, sometimes in life, we just don't know. Things happen. But what I would say is, thank goodness I did that because I am here and well, and I got through all of those very critical illnesses. And I really, attained my vitality throughout all those very significant treatments, all because I attribute it to many, many things. But a big part of that has to do with the whole food plant-based nutrition. So excited to be able to share my enthusiasm and talk about it. And it's so enlightening to see the patients that I get to work with every single day and to see how working with them during their cancer journey and after, how, like with me, it can help them as well to really attain that feeling of being pretty well during these difficult treatments, but then really flourishing after treatment. And then beyond that, with breast cancer, I probably shouldn't keep on talking. I should let you ask me 4 questions, but I get super excited. You give me an hour, I'll go for 5. But, we can help to prevent breast cancer by eating healthy and by maintaining our weight, by optimizing our diet. It means we have less body fat, we have better body composition. That's critical when we're talking about nutrition specifically. But when we look at breast cancer survivorship, gosh, the data with nutrition is continuing to emerge more and more. So it's very, very exciting field to be in at this time more than ever.
Love it. I love it. Okay. So we do want to dive into the clinical components. And we do want to know your journey. But first, we always ask our clinicians to provide us with their recipe that they love, that they feel is really easy or delicious or both. And so you sent us a recipe for burgers. And so tell us a little bit about your recipe. And then when you're done, I'm going to tell you, I want to do some product shout outs because I made a barbecue black bean burger. And I think it's really important to kind of tell people what some fun products to include.
Okay, so this is by far my favorite plant-based recipe, and it is actually the Plant Strong Building Burger Guide. And so obviously it's not meat, it's made with plants and primarily beans. And so I do it super easy. I try to do it on Sundays and I cook a bunch of them so that I can then freeze some and have them throughout the week. So it's like a core aspect of what I eat throughout the week in different varieties and ways. So am I able to go into a little more detail then about what I use? So yes. We'll look at the recipe, that basically the recipe, and I'm just going to go by memory because I do it so much, it's pretty easy for me to remember. So I personally use 2 cans of unsalted beans and I vary it. So it kind of differs each week for some variety. I rinse the beans. And the reason I rinse the beans is this is an important one, because a lot of times when patients come in to see me and I start talking about how they can replace some animal proteins with some plant proteins, and I bring up beans, all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, that makes me gassy. And no one wants to say that word, but that's what they're thinking, or that's what they go ahead and tell me, right? And so there's basically like a carbohydrate that's in beans. It's called raffinose, and that's what makes us kind of gassy. And it's water soluble, so it's sucked up by the water. And if we can get rid of that water and throw it away, then we're going to be possibly less gassy if we're sensitive to that. So in the beans, when you have all that liquid that the beans are soaking in, toss that and rinse the beans, and it'll help you with some of that maybe bloating that you experience. So going back to what beans I select, it doesn't matter. It's really up to you. It's whichever one you like. I usually do 2 different kinds though. And my favorite are, and it's not actually on the Plant Strong site, my favorite are black-eyed peas, or black-eyed beans with the, and I always get this mixed up, with the cannellini beans, I guess I'm probably saying that right, or with like a white bean, any kind of white bean. I like to mix those 2 together. That's my favorite. My next favorite would be if I mix lentils with black beans. So those are the ones that I mix in terms of beans, so 2 cans. And then the next thing that I do is you do a grain. And so it recommends, I believe, 1 cup of grain, but I love to run. And so I typically need to get my carbohydrates up. So I do 2 cups of grains, and I typically use the oatmeal because I love oatmeal. So I use oatmeal, but there's a list on this recipe that you get to choose what you want to do in terms of the grains. Then it comes to vegetables, and I get carried away with vegetables. And sometimes the consistency of my burgers ends up being not as ideal as probably the recipe intended, but I'm okay with that because I love vegetables. So I put all kinds of stuff in there. So I usually put in my food processor everything that I have in my refrigerator that I need to use. So I'll put some carrots, I'll put celery, I'll put some mushrooms, I'll put some onions. I put
you cook that first, or do you just put it in raw?
I just put it in raw. I put fresh fennel, I put bok choy, I put broccoli, I put all kinds of stuff, you know, and it ends up being a lot of vegetables. So I end up doing probably about 2 cups of that actually. And I'm starting to put this into a bowl. So I put the beans in a bowl, I put the grains in a bowl, I put the food processor cut up vegetables in a bowl. And then I use a 1/4 cup of vegetable broth. And I personally, again, I use the Plant Strong, I love it. And so I use the sofrita. I think it has a really good flavor, or the mushroom. And so I use a 1/2 cup of that and I stir it up. And depending on how liquidy the vegetables got, or if I pulverize them a little too much, maybe I need a little bit less liquid, or maybe I need a little bit more. So you'll just go according to the thickness and consistency. And then you can put whatever spices you want. So sometimes I put some pepper and some added garlic in it. I've squeezed lemon juice in it. So I just get really creative. The cool thing with the recipe is it has a bunch of things listed. So you can kind of be creative in the kitchen. And I'm otherwise not a creative person at all. I'm like very predictable, which is just so boring. So this lets me be creative in my kitchen, and it's pretty fun. So I make my patties. I put them on some like parchment paper, and then I cook them in the air fryer. And I love them in the air fryer because they get really crispy on the outside. I typically cook about 6 of them. And then if there's any left over, and then I'll cook the next batch of 6 when I'm done. And then I'll save maybe 4 of them, and then I'll put the rest of them in the freezer for the rest of the week, and I'll enjoy them that way. And I find them so delicious. If I put them on like a bed of mixed greens, is typically how I serve them, and maybe even some added vegetables on the side. So that's what I do with the bean burger. I may have talked more than you.
So
They are awesome.
So when people ask or talk about that time when it's 7:30 p.m. and they have nothing planned, and it's really easy to go drop by Publix or drop by a restaurant and pick food up and bring it home, and they're like, what do I do in that situation? It's like, no, there's almost nothing you can do in that situation other than have some intestinal fortitude to cook, which is almost impossible and not going to happen. So the next best thing is to have made these burgers and have them in the fridge, or excuse me, the freezer. So, if they're frozen and all you have to do is microwave something, that's more likely to happen than cooking. So these are the kind of things that you can have frozen and ready to go, but you do have to have it already prepared. So okay, so I want to do a shameless plug to some products that I just absolutely love. The first is a local seasoning company called Fresh Jacks, and I put the link in the chat. And in my burger, I did black beans and some brown rice. And by the way, the brown rice was just like a microwavable pack. So didn't even cook them, just microwaved it. And then the beans were canned and I squished them together, the beans and the rice. So that's kind of my stickiness. And then I just did some basic vegetables like mushrooms, onions. I had riced cauliflower, threw that in there, sauteed all that with a little bit of barbecue sauce. And these Rosy Cheeks flavor is barbecue seasoning. And I put in some corn and some green onions, and I patted them together. Now, I almost never leave myself enough time to do this, but today I had some time. So I actually put them in the fridge for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes to let it sit cold, and that helps it stick together. And then I went ahead and just roasted them. So the other two products is a gluten-free panko is Ian's. And so if your burger mixture happens to be a little too wet, maybe like you put a little too much sauce in there or something, then you can add some panko crumbs. Another alternative, which is this brand called Appel Foods, and it's nut crumbs. It's just nuts and seasonings. So, but it's like a mixture, but it's kind of in between a panko crumb and a breadcrumb. It's not quite as crunchy as panko. They're a little thinner, I guess you would say, but they have a ton of different flavors. I just happen to use original today, but I have Italian, I have spicy, and I just happen to put like maybe a quarter cup, if that, in here. I just used 1 can of beans and a cup of rice, and the rest were veggies. So, and then I always try to get my greens in, and in this case, it happens to be red, but I have radicchio. So it's this like beautiful leafy food product at the store that a lot of people just skip over because it's red and it's small and no one ever hears of it, but it's very healthy for you. And I just had like a few slices and put it on my burger. So anyway, just wanted to make sure everyone had some ideas for how to flavor and how to build your burger. So what'd you do, Dawn?
I had some chickpeas cooked. So I don't know if you guys can see this, but I wanted to show you before I actually ate it. So I had chickpeas and black beans that I mixed, and then I did oatmeal because I'm the same as Dr. Dawn. I love oatmeal. And then I did carrots, mushrooms. I love mushrooms. And I can't remember what else I put in it now that I think about it, because I actually made these earlier and then I was able to freeze half of the batch. So I did carrots, mushrooms, and maybe onions. I think I did onions. And then this is on the side, what I've been making in big batches, actually for my dog, because he hasn't been wanting to eat. So we just share it. And I do edamame, and I'll do some potatoes and carrots and broccoli and brown rice. And so he gets a little of this with his food. And then so I was eating some of my dog's food along with my burger. So, but it's really good. So if I need something to eat, I just will grab a couple spoonfuls of that.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sometimes overshot the amount of liquid I put in, and it's too liquidy. And so my workaround is just like the little white souffle bowls, is I'll use those and I'll just put the content in there and I'll bake several of those. And that's great too. And then I'll just freeze it that way, and I'll just put wrap over it and I'll freeze it that way. And it's wonderful that way as well. If you mess it up, I think I overshoot it. I put so much in it because I kind of use it as my whole meal that I can then just put on lettuce throughout the week. So that's why I put so much other stuff in it, to get that diversity and that wide array of variety. But yeah, those look good, what you guys made. I'm hungry now.
Yeah, that is a fabulous idea. Okay, so Heather, are you ready to okay.
Let's jump.
Okay. All right. So now what we'd like to do is ask you about your plant-based journey. When did you decide to go plant-based, and why?
And just so you know, in terms of agenda today, you'll do this in about 5 to 7 minutes, and then you will have 20 minutes to talk about breast cancer nerdiness. So,
Yes.
or breast health. Okay. So like your story in about 5 to 7 minutes, and then you'll have 20 minutes to talk about lifestyle medicine and breast health.
Okay, perfect. Good. I like how you gave me the timeline. Okay, so, I mentioned that growing up, I was really healthy. I mean, my family was, so I was really lucky. And, as a little girl, going to the health food store was honestly one of my favorite places to go. And back in the 1970s, the health food stores then, they would have all the fresh greens in like a refrigerator section, and you would walk into that refrigerator section. And I remember that so distinctly, like opening the door and going in because it was cold, but yet it smelled so fresh. So, my journey into this healthy nutrition started at a very young age, as long as I could remember. Like when I was aged to remember, I was already going to health food stores. So I was really unique in that perspective. And then growing up, I always kind of really prided myself in being different than my friends because I always ate healthy food. So we'd go on a field trip, I would have like a spirulina bar and have, like food for life bread that was sprouted rather than like Wonder Bread and stuff like that. So it was how I was raised. I knew no differently, unless I'd go visit my grandparents where they'd have like Lucky Charms, and my parents would be like, no, you're not allowed to have that. So it was cool to be raised that way. I absolutely loved it. Now we were, whole food people, but we did have some animal products. There was, I lived in the country, so there was some exposure to like, farmers that had, fresh chickens and fresh beef and stuff like that. So we had some, but it was a pretty modest amount. And I would say we were pretty prudent in our diet. We didn't eat like large volumes, and we always ate family meals together, which is, I think, a really core value that nowadays a lot of people have fallen behind on. So I really had that as well. And that's something I've carried through my whole life with my daughter as she grew up as well. So, going on to junior high school, that continued the healthy eating. College, I was whole food plant only at that time, very, very strict. Got into fitness contests and had this personal trainer like mess with my brain and said I couldn't build muscle. This is interesting, right? Couldn't build muscle without doing animal products. So I started eating animal products. So that's what happened, right? But what's ironic is it was honestly, a few short years after that I actually was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I don't think that caused it, but it was kind of interesting, right? And so once I got diagnosed with the cancer, of course, I was like right back on track with eating healthy again. And a little bit preceding that time, I had already made that shift because I didn't want to be on animal products. So during my cancer journey, I was, whole food plant predominant. I would still have some animal products every once in a while back then. And then 3 years after I had my chemotherapy, a bone marrow transplant, and radiation is when I got diagnosed with end-stage heart failure. I was very sick. My heart was only beating at 8%. And, again, I was still eating healthy diet, whole food plant predominant. I keep on saying predominant because there would still be some animal products here and there. I wasn't as strict as I was in college at that time. And then, fast forward, I continued, to do fairly well, but with a lot of limitations over those 18 years, thanks to medical advancement. I kind of had ups and downs depending on the year and what the treatment looked like. I would kind of, have a decline, and they would figure out an intervention so I'd get better. And it was just this constant up and down. Lots of complications along that way. But in 2019, I got a lot more sick. I had actually had sudden cardiac arrest with a near-death experience. And they listed me for heart transplant in 2019. And it was then in 2019 that I went the strictest I had ever been. So I went whole food, plant only, no oil, no sugar, because I knew as I was approaching transplant, that's, kind of the terrain I wanted my body to have. So that's the direction I went at that point. And, one would say, well, did you feel better? I was so sick medically that I don't know if I saw a difference because there was no cardiac output for my heart. So it was hard to really gauge the diet. But what I will say is after heart transplant, you're on so many medications and you're severely immunosuppressed and you remain on those immunosuppressives the rest of your life. And so there's a lot of symptoms that go along with those medicines. And at one point after transplant, I was actually on 70 pills, 70. Like it was crazy. Like I was so full from my pills. I was like, I can't even eat my vegetables because I'm eating all these colorful pills. Does that count? But, I was really committed. And I mean, I've never been on a more perfected diet than now. And I just love it. Like it empowers me so much. And I'm like I have a lot of energy and I'm able to make this happen. I will say it was difficult. And part of that time when I was so sick with heart failure, I just didn't have energy. Like it was hard to even eat. I didn't have enough energy. So it was really hard to even chew vegetables. I didn't have the energy to do it. But now knowing what I know, there's times when I reflect back thinking, gosh, what if I would have tried to do this or that? Maybe it would have been a little bit easier. But what the blessing in this entire journey I've went through, and I would never trade in cancer, I would never trade in heart failure, I've never traded my transplant, is I've learned so much as a patient about the obstacles of trying to be healthy during that time and how to make food. So I know a lot of little tricks along the way that can make it easier. So that's why I love working with my patients, to be able to say, hey, you could try this, or maybe this, and maybe doable. But kind of when we're in the trenches with the disease, it's not easy to live your best life. And that's why sometimes we need to rely on caregivers to help us and friends or whoever it is, meal services, whatever it takes to get us to eat that healthy nutrition. Because now, post-heart transplant, I am at like the pinnacle of well-being. Like I feel so good. I am so fully alive. I think I would win like the #1 person in the world for liveliness award. If there was such an award, I feel so good. And I think it's my diet to a great degree. I think there's a lot of other hugely, strong aspects that also support that, like, a strong, loving family and a spiritual and strong belief in God and exercise and good sleep and, all of the avoiding toxic exposures, all these other pillars of lifestyle medicine. But nutrition for me, I think, is what harmonizes my life. And it's my passion. So that's, how I kind of have evolved through this, but it's always been a part of my life. And so it's been really special that I've been on this journey and been so fascinated and interested in it. So I've just read about it nonstop since I was a very young person. So I've been able to gain so much knowledge, and it's fun as I get to meet, over the years, some of these fathers of lifestyle medicine. And now I actually get to talk to them as a doctor. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you may have saved my life because I read your books like 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So it's very exciting. And, I really, want to credit, Dr. Ornish and Dr. Esselstyn and Dr. Clapper and Dr. T. Colin Campbell, because these fathers of, whole food plant-based nutrition, their research has mattered, especially in the position I'm in at Mayo Clinic, because the evidence base that they created for me allows me to practice medicine that's based in science. And there is nothing more awesome than that. So that was my inspiration to, do what I do with my patients, to start the integrative medicine program within our breast clinic, because there's so much research supportive of healthy nutrition and healthy living in the breast cancer population. But also to get this lifestyle medicine residency curriculum going, because guess what? It's only me, and then we have other integrative doctors, but I'm the one mainly in this whole food plant-based space, and I just love it. But there's only me. So I'm now training 43 residents across the entire Mayo Clinic enterprise, these brilliant residents, smartest doctors to be, right? They're doctors already, but doctors to become board certified in their unique specialties in the world. They're brilliant in the pillars of lifestyle medicine, one of those being whole food plant-based nutrition. And they're super excited. And we're super excited to generate lots of really impressive research to keep that work going, that these great doctors, these founders of lifestyle medicine, whole food plant-based nutrition started. We're excited to continue that. So love this stuff. So I could talk all day.
Yeah, that is.
That's probably about 5 minutes. I didn't have timer.
No, that was, I love your enthusiasm and your excitement and your passion. And I can't wait to talk to you more offline too. But okay, so let's now move on to talk about breast cancer and how nutrition and lifestyle can aid in prevention, and then a little bit about how it can support individuals during and after a breast cancer diagnosis.
That's great. So So I'll just start talking. I mean, unless there's like specific questions in regards to that you want to ask me. Hold on, I'm pulling up your pictures. There you go. So, in terms of prevention when it comes to breast cancer and, really cancer prevention overall, because a lot of these recommendations for breast cancer prevention are the same things for colon cancer prevention for men and your husbands, sons, brothers, same thing for prostate cancer prevention. So, there's tons of research when it looks at many, many cancers, but for the focus of this talk today, it's breast cancer. And so, the main lifestyle aspect, especially when we look at the American Institute for Cancer Research, cancer prevention guidelines, is weight management, right? That's number one. And we know that those metabolic aspects related to cancer, when we look at the most recent update that was just released about the burden of attributable risk from metabolic conditions, we know about 36% of those deaths is because of metabolic causes, and that's preventable. So if we can help people maintain their weight throughout a lifetime and not gain weight starting at a young age, right? And then once women are into that postmenopausal age range, avoid overweight and obesity. That's when it's critical. So as a woman's older, overweight, obesity is a very, very, very bad thing when it comes to breast cancer risk. That's why breast cancer is preventable among so many women who are in their postmenopausal age range. When women are premenopausal, I have young women, it breaks my heart when they come in to see me with a new breast cancer diagnosis. They're 28, they're 35, maybe 42, and they're beating themselves up because they think maybe I ate something wrong or maybe I did something wrong. You're really almost too young to have done anything to cause this breast cancer. Breast cancer should not occur at a young age. This is not your fault. And nor is it your fault when you're older, right? Everything in hindsight is 2020. But now that we're getting this information, it is just an invitation to live your healthiest life. And moms, we need to be sure with our children that we're helping them live their healthiest life. So it's always interesting when I'm talking to moms, they're like, well, if I do this diet, my family's not going to do it. I'm like, ooh, and I'm still trying to polish how I'm going to approach this. But we need to feed our children the same diet that we're so motivated to start when we're diagnosed with breast cancer, because our children are us, they're our genes. So it's important to start this early. And I just am so grateful to my parents for introducing to me this early on, because it's like what I know and it's what I'm passionate about and it's what's right. So, when we think about nutrition and can it prevent breast cancer? Again, number one, we know it can help to prevent postmenopausal breast cancer, especially because it can help with weight management. So that's a big thing. And in 2021, there was a great study that showed that the vegan diet or a plant-based diet was the best diet for weight management. So, we're going to see more of this. Now, the Mediterranean diet is very good as well. So it's not to discredit the Mediterranean diet, but in my clinical practice, if I have a patient that comes in and is highly motivated to lose weight and they want to go on a whole food plant-only diet, that's my patient I'm going to get to lose weight successfully and actually feel good while they're doing it. And they're not going to be restricted, because when you're on a plant-based diet, you're full from all that fiber. So it's super exciting when I wake up in the morning and I get all these messages coming in from the night before. And it shows me that, oh my gosh, I lost 15 pounds. I lost 12 pounds. I feel great. It's the first time I don't feel like I'm dieting, because they're on this high fiber diet that's filling their belly up for the first time. And they're eating nutritious foods too. So, that nutrient density, all the vitamins, the minerals, and those important micro and macronutrients that we're getting in the food, it's filled in those foods, versus then if we're eating, a lot of animal products that are especially void of something like fiber. There's no fiber in an animal product, so you're not going to get full from it. Okay. So let's kind of point to the research. So the most impressive study that I have seen there's been many over the past few years actually in this space of lifestyle medicine, but one that I'm really excited to share with you comes out of the Women's Health Initiative. This is a very high quality study. It had about 49,000 women. Like, oh, that's a lot of women, right? No one can argue the results of this study. It's a huge study. These women were postmenopausal and they were put on a low-fat diet. So they were put on a 20% fat diet, and they emphasized whole grains, vegetables, and fruits as well, which I loved about this study. So they followed these women for 20 years almost. It was 19.6 years exactly. And at that 19.6 year mark, they saw a 21% reduced risk of dying for breast cancer in those women. And this is what's so cool in medicine, is I have a lot of women come in to see me with the question, how can I reduce my risk of getting breast cancer? And so we do a breast cancer risk assessment. And in the newest breast cancer guidelines, We recommend for all women to start their mammograms at 40 and have a mammogram every year until we tell you you can stop. And quite frankly, I'm gonna have you do that all the way until you're until forever, okay? Until you no longer think you wanna live, then we can maybe stop it, but I want you to do it your whole life. The next thing they said is risk assessment at the age of 25. So this is very important. So you should have your breast cancer risk assessed at the age of 25 so we know if there's an increased risk of breast cancer that we need to intervene for, all right? But the take-home message here is, in medicine, for women who are at a high risk of breast cancer, a lot of times they're put on medicines to reduce their risk of breast cancer. And these medicines can have some adverse side effects that can reduce quality of life for sure. And there's some question if there's some toxicities with these medications that we need to really pay attention to. And you know what's really fascinating is it reduces the risk of breast cancer. That's great. But does it reduce the risk of dying from breast cancer? No. So here I have this awesome study, low-fat diet, vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and I can reduce a woman's risk of dying from breast cancer. It's going to increase her quality of life, and it's going to do everything that I wanted to do. So it's a wonderful study when it comes to prevention. So I'm super duper excited, to have this research that we can now share with women. So there was another study that looked at fruit and vegetable consumption in relationship to breast cancer occurring, and it showed that there was about a 26% reduced risk of breast cancer for those women who had the highest amount of vegetables and fruits compared to those that had the lowest. And the type of breast cancer it reduced was the most aggressive breast cancer. So how cool is that? If we can get rid of the most aggressive breast cancer, that's an estrogen and progesterone receptor negative type of breast cancer. So again, exciting data. But there was another really cool data point that came out of this, or information that came out of this study. And you're not going to believe this, but it showed that fruit juice consumption actually increased the overall breast cancer risk, which was quite surprising. But we've seen the same trend in breast cancer survivors where fruit juice confers not as good of a prognosis. So why is that? And people, for years have drank fruit juice with the thought, oh, well, I got my fruit for the day. But you're stripping one of the most vital products of the fruit juice. And I keep on bringing up fiber. Fiber is so important, and only 3% of Americans get enough fiber. So that's a huge issue. Everyone comes into me and they say, I'm trying to get more protein. I'm like, you don't need to worry about protein. Everyone gets enough protein almost. Protein is so overemphasized and over-sensationalized, and it's probably the culprit of a lot of our problems, quite frankly, particularly when it comes to animal protein. So it's super exciting. This is something you would want to individualize with your doctor when it comes to protein recommendations, as long as your doctor is, educated in this space of lifestyle medicine and whole food plant-based nutrition. But we've overshot the recommendation for protein for a very, very long time. So the recommendation I have is we need to increase your fiber, because the fiber is what's very, very important for maintaining weight. It helps blood sugar, it can help hormonal optimization. So fiber. The recommendation for women is still way lower than I would recommend it, on the range of 25 to 30 grams for women based on just the general nutrition guidelines. But for in that, lifestyle medicine space where I practice medicine, I want my women to be 35 grams at a minimum, even upwards near 40, 45 grams. So I really push the fiber high in my patients. If they can get it up that high, that's great. And it really helps to contribute with that weight management or weight loss. Okay, so that's very exciting. The other thing I would say is when it comes to, certain studies that they've done, they've seen that women who have higher levels of beta carotene not only have, higher levels of quality of life in their, in how they're living their day in, day out, but there's also been a lower risk of certain breast cancers with those higher carotenoid levels. And so carotenoids are pretty ubiquitous in all vegetables and fruits. So again, we're seeing studies with even lab tests that show that people who eat more fruits and vegetables have a lower risk of breast cancer. So again, it's just to promote the use of those vegetables and fruits. So that would be, what I would say from like a breast cancer prevention standpoint, I think are some of the really exciting studies that have come out recently. But let's kind of move into that cancer survivorship space, because that's where I think that there is just an enormous amount of data that's starting to come out. And there was a great study that came out last year in the Nurses Health Study. And what that particular study showed us, that was about 9,000 women that were in that particular study, is they put them on a really simple diet. And it was a diabetes risk reduction diet. And this was not a hard diet to follow at all. And so like the 9 components of that diet were high fiber, like whole grains, like cereal fiber. They did whole fruit, not fruit juice. They had increased polyunsaturated fat and decreased saturated fat. Things like coffee and nuts were seen to be healthy, which is fun. Everyone loves hearing that coffee seems to be fine for you, right? And there's more and more data with that. And they had lower intake of sugary things that would be high in the glycemic index. They had lower consumption of red meat. And then again, like I said, they had lower consumption of sugary fruit juices or sugar sweetened beverages, and they avoided trans fats. And what this kind of very healthy dietary pattern again showed us is that there was a 34% improved overall survival among these breast cancer survivors. But here's what was super exciting, is in those women who previously were on junk food diets before their breast cancer diagnosis, but decided to change at the time of their cancer diagnosis, they had a 23% improved survival after breast cancer from making that change. So I just think that was terrific. So it's the message there is it's never too late to make that change. In this particular cohort or group of women that were studied in this Nurses Health study, I want to make sure I emphasize that this is never about just one particular thing, right? People come in like, what's like the best food to reduce the risk of breast cancer? It's not just one thing. It's the overall pattern of how you live your life. It's the overall pattern of what your nutrition looks like. So it's not about just one particular food, but I still think it's exciting for me to continue on with what I'm going to say. So in this study, they highlighted a few vegetables and fruits that really stood out with statistical significance. And so they showed that 2 cups of green leafy vegetables help to improve overall survival after a breast cancer diagnosis by 20%. Having a serving of cruciferous vegetables improved overall survival by 13%. And this next one is super cool. It's almost hard to believe that it's been in multiple studies over and over. Having simply 2 servings of berries a week improved breast cancer specific survival by 25%. I mean, so it's so exciting. None of these are going to hurt you. So if someone's like, well, we need more studies, it hasn't been like, time out. There's no harm in doing this. So until I find out something otherwise, there's never going to be harm, because there's never going to be harm in natural foods. Enjoy those foods and try to get those foods in every day if you can. So I love that. I think that this is a good point to also emphasize the importance of whole food, plant-based nutrition versus processed food. So there was a recent study, it's not even published yet, it was presented at a recent conference that had 65,000 postmenopausal French women. And these women were on a plant predominant diet. So when I say predominant, that means it was mostly plants, but they still had some meat here and there, okay? The women on the whole food plant predominant diet had a 12% reduced risk of breast cancer occurring. Are you ready for this? The women who were on a processed vegan diet, the people say I'm vegan, but they're eating French fries and ketchup, or they're eating like all these very processed cheeses that are vegan, or these processed fake meats, right? These women had a 20% increased risk of breast cancer. I love this study because it highlights it's got to be natural. And
so really quickly, Dr. Dawn, when you say 20% increase of cancer, as compared to what?
As compared to the traditional women that weren't doing this diet. So 20% increase if they're on the processed versus 12% reduced risk if they're on the whole food.
Okay.
So it was a very fascinating study. And I love what you're asking. I'm excited to kind of read all the details of this particular study to see what other components they were able to highlight in that study. But it yields a very important take-home message that we know, right? And even, the one study that I talked about with that diabetes risk reduction diet talks about trans fats, that you want to avoid that. And the average American has 60 to 70%, ultra processed foods in their diet. And that's extremely concerning. And we're now in a generation that we're being exposed and our kids are being exposed. So we really don't know the real ramifications of what these ultra processed foods are going to do to us, probably for a while to come. And, we know that diet in this unhealthy way of living is the #1 cause of deaths from chronic disease. So, this, what I'm talking about, isn't just about breast cancer. We shouldn't be so provincial. This is going to help reduce risk of diabetes and heart disease and stroke, and help your kidneys be healthier and help you be happier. COVID taught us nothing, more than this significant strain on mental health, right? And so we know that when folks eat a healthier plant-based diet, that also helps some various markers that can help mood and such. So it's just a way of living that can really optimize not just quality of life, but also, reduction in these various disease states. And as you can see, there's innumerable breast cancer studies that are super duper exciting. How am I out of time? You want me to keep going? Because trust me, I can keep going. But I can just keep talking. Are we good?
We're at 6:40, so we have about 20 minutes left. So I would say maybe like 5 more minutes.
Oh yeah, that's
Okay.
perfect. So
And then what we do at the end is we have some fun questions where Dawn and I go back and forth, and they're meant to be rapid fire. So like 1 to 2 minute answers, and we just go back and forth with a bunch of different questions.
Okay, okay, so here's the myth buster. I have to say this one, soy. So everyone still thinks soy is bad for you. Soy is actually the best thing for your breasts. It's great for your bones, it's great for your heart. So we know that soy consumption is suggested to be protective against breast cancer, especially when it's consumed throughout the lifetime. So it's very important to have it early on in age. So I had my daughter start having soy milk and enjoying whole soy with edamame, soy nuts, tofu, tempeh when she was a young girl. I was really excited to get her started on it at a young age, knowing this data many years ago. So, okay, what if you have breast cancer? Should you avoid it once you get breast cancer? And absolutely not. There's high quality meta-analyses. What does that mean? That means they look at all the best studies that are out there and they review them. And what we know is that soy consumption, even if you didn't know this data once you get diagnosed with breast cancer, but soy consumption after a breast cancer diagnosis reduces the risk of breast cancer coming back. There's not a statistical finding yet that we can say that it improves survival, but we'll keep watching that data. And I would suspect that we'll also see that emerge as well. But very exciting to say that, hey, it helps to reduce breast cancer recurrence. So that's very, very exciting with soy. So a lot of folks ask me about dairy. We're going to be very specific to breast cancer, and we're going to go with the data because I think we do have to stick to the data. So when it comes to dairy, high-fat dairy increases dying after breast cancer. Done. I mean, I don't need to say anymore. You shouldn't be doing high-fat dairy. No one should. Butter is in that, but it's very, very bad. Don't do it. So what about low-fat dairy or fat-free dairy? So in this Life After Cancer epidemiologic study, very high-quality study, large study, lots of women, though it showed this high-fat dairy issue with causing death after breast cancer, it didn't necessarily show it with the low-fat or the fat-free. So it makes me scratch my head, right? I think we need to still continue following this. And I personally am not a big fan of dairy because of other aspects that dairy is something that I don't feel very excited about, like insulin growth factor, with the fact how cows nowadays are taken care of and what the cow milk may have, maybe the impact of dairy on our gut microbiome, but there's still calcium in dairy, okay? And so when I think of cheese, I wanna start thinking, so what do I do with cheese? What else would be a problem in cheese? So cheese is the #1 source of saturated fat in our country. And we know that saturated fat, remember when I was talking about the Nurses Health study with helping breast cancer survivors after their breast cancer diagnosis, that particular study really focused on having lower saturated fat. We know that saturated fat can cause a lot of problems in a lot of different disease states. So cheese for me is something that I really try to discourage my patients from taking. There's definitely a cheese addiction among many, many patients, and there's like a morphine derivative in cheese. So that's kind of why people, when they have cheese, they love it and it's hard to get rid of it. So you kind of have to break that hack. And so I typically find that, you know, we got to just take it one day at a time, try to reduce it by 50% maybe to start. If you really love cheese, then maybe it's better to do goat or sheep cheese and just be modest about how much you're consuming. When it comes to yogurt, there are cultures in yogurt. So if someone really wants to do dairy, that's probably the safer place to stand. And, you know, maybe there's some controversy about fat-free dairy versus low-fat dairy, but I'd rather my patient probably be towards the fat-free range if they're a breast cancer survivor, knowing this data with the fact that high-fat dairy is very concerning among breast cancer patients. And then I'll just back all this up. You can ask me if I consume dairy, and my answer is no. Because I've been interviewed on this product many, many times, so there's still enough science that I believe that I'd rather avoid it. As of now, I get my calcium from plant products, and I'm very mindful of doing that. And I think that matters, but we'll continue to follow this data. We do know that there's this kind of signal in the research that, and it's very interesting, but it seems that dairy products seem to be a bit protective for colon cancer. And it's the calcium that's the protective element. And so the suggestion is plant calcium likely would have the same benefit, but we have to be able to answer that. This is large volumes of data that have shown this. So it's something we all have a colon, so we have to kind of scratch our heads. So maybe some dairy is okay for certain people if they feel it's right for them. And if they're going to have the dairy, I would maybe be towards that direction of doing something more like yogurt, or maybe a goat cheese or a sheep cheese or something like that, rather than traditional cow cheese. So soy is a thumbs up, dairy is, we stick to the data, hard to know, but I avoid it myself.
Okay, that I hope that is helpful. We did actually get a quick question before Heather and I ask you some of our list of questions. So soy in what forms is tofu not considered a processed food?
That's a great question. So, I mean, it is minimally processed, right? So the best way to get soy is going to be edamame. You know, you're doing the whole plant. And then as you kind of go down from there, as you're doing soy milk and you're doing tofu, all those are going to become more and more processed, but they're minimally processed. So I am fine with it. I mean, it depends on how you want to be in terms of your whole food, but I still feel that that minimally processed food is going to be okay for you. With soy milk and really any plant milk, you want to be careful with it though, because not all plant milks are created the same. You know, my favorite plant milk is soy milk because you're going to get a little bit of fiber. I've been saying fiber all day. You know, you're going to get protein, but you want to make sure that it's non-GMO. In my experience, all soy products that are for human consumption at this point are non-GMO. I've not seen one on the market that isn't, but be mindful of that. You want it to be non-GMO. And so I also prefer for it to be organic. And if you're getting soy milk, make sure it's unsweetened. The one thing that I really am, dissatisfied with is a lot of the oat milks have oil added to it. So be very careful of that. It can be very surprising. A lot of patients gravitate towards it and love it unknowing. But again, that fat is kind of that craving that they have, and they don't even know it, but that oil is in that milk, and that's why they kind of like it, because their body's telling them, oh, I like this. It's that fat that they're not getting from something else. But I would rather that fat come from a natural thing like the soy milk. So that's my favorite, personally, milk for myself, and the one that I probably steer my patients closest to if I can find it. There's a lot of thought that maybe hemp milk is great. It seems to be really great for climate change and things like that too. And so there's a little bit of protein in that. So hemp milk might be a nice option as well. So hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, you're exactly right. Edamame would be the best way to get whole food soy.
Okay, awesome. Okay, Heather, do you want to take it away?
Let's do it. Okay. So you're in Jacksonville, Florida, and we like to understand where people eat. So if you were going to eat at a restaurant, what is your favorite restaurant in the area, and what is your favorite dish?
Can I name a few?
Yeah.
You know, I was going to ask them. Okay, so this is really interesting. So, for our cancer patients, and for me personally, after transplant, as a transplant patient being immunocompromised, I'm not supposed to have salads at restaurants because you don't know what kind of organism you can expose yourself to. So I'm not allowed to have a salad. So at M Brothers, which is Mayo Clinic's new restaurant, it's owned by the Major brothers, who, here in Jacksonville has a lot of restaurants through town. They pride themselves in preparing all of their salads so that they're safe for the immunocompromised population. So I'm very excited to make that announcement. If anyone didn't know that, and if you're in the midst of cancer treatment and they've told you can't have salads when you eat out, you can absolutely go to M Brothers and enjoy a salad. So I love their beet salad. I just ask them to hold the dressing and hold the blue cheese. I also like their hammock hollow salad. And again, I just have them hold the dressing. But keep that in mind. And that's, I guess, a nice point I can bring up right here. The newest American Society of Clinical Oncology guidelines tell us that if you're in the middle of chemotherapy, there's no reason that your doctor should tell you that you need to avoid raw vegetables and fruits. We have plenty of data now that tell us that you do not need to avoid raw vegetables and fruits if you're eating at home and you have proper sanitation that you can wash them the way that's necessary. If you're at a restaurant, you have no quality control, however they're washing them. But M Brothers at Mayo Clinic, the restaurant, again, because we have this patient population and community we serve there, all of our restaurants on campus, specifically M Brothers, do cater to the fact that you can enjoy that salad. So enjoy that. Another restaurant that I love is, and this is one of my favorite, and I always put it on my Facebook page. I always put it on again this weekend. I'm like, you posted this 3 times already. You can't do it. Is Green Papaya. They have Thai fresh ginger, and I get it with tofu, but a few things. So it's called Thai fresh ginger. It has this amazing sauce, but I get it on the side because I don't like a lot of sauces. I'm sure there's probably a little bit of oil in that, and I try not to do any oil. I get it with brown rice, and I get the tofu, but I made a mistake. Once I just said tofu, and it came, and I'm like, it's kind of crunchy. They fried it. So you got to say steamed tofu, you get the vegetables, get the brown rice, and the sauce on the side. It's awesome. So if you're worried about going to restaurants and like being a burden, just know that I was probably there before you at some point, and I asked them to put all my stuff on the side. Okay, they're used to it if I've been there. I go to a True Food Kitchen a lot, but I'm very particular when I go there. I love the staff there, by the way, they're awesome. But for some reason, they tend to put a lot of oil in their food. And so my favorite thing there, though, is their ancient grain bowl. But in their grains, it seems to be oily to me. So I say no oil in the grains. I get my sauce on the side. And I think they have the best tofu I've ever had, how they make it. So I love their tofu. And it's like sweet potatoes and snap peas and mushrooms and onions. And I like the grain that comes with. So I really love that. I think it's in the wintertime. They have an immunity bowl that's delicious. And the other thing I love at True Food Kitchen, there's not many places that is, they have green iced tea that I love. And that epogallocatechin gallate 3, which is a really strong polyphenol, it has such huge antioxidant effects that it's like medicine in a glass with ice. So I love it. So it's like food is medicine in a great way. Don't do green tea in a pill, drink it. It's very good for you. I can keep on going on. There's a few other restaurants that I like, but I'll stop there.
Okay, well, those are good. Okay. What is your favorite minimally processed packaged food product? So if somebody wanted kind of a, pre-made or packaged food, just minimally processed.
So, I don't really do like packaged foods per se, but this is a packaged food. It's just like a packaged meal. So I think this will answer your question. So I love, and if I saw a few of my patients on here, we should probably ask one of my patients to answer this because they would be able to answer it. It's the Mary's Gone crackers, either the classic in the red or the super seed in the blue. And so, anytime I have a patient that goes to buy a cracker or a piece of bread, I say, to have an awesome cracker, it would be at least 5 grams of fiber. To be pretty good, it can have 3 grams of fiber. I really haven't found one over 3 grams, and Mary's has 3 grams of fiber. There's no added oil and there's no added sugar. So I love the Mary's Gone crackers. I love to put some nut butter on it, and I thaw out frozen organic cherries, and I put those cherries on top, and that's like my nighttime snack every night. I love it. Delicious. So it can break that sweet craving. So I love it. I would also say soy milk because I love soy milk. But again, I love that question that was asked from one of our listeners that I think the soy milk is great. Sometimes you're like stuck and I have a lot of patients ask me, what bar do I use? And I've struggled with this. There is just not a good bar. But my favorite bar that I found that I feel is natural is the Scouts bar. It's primarily with dates. There's about 10 grams of protein in it. And my favorite flavor is the cherry. It's like a cherry kind of cocoa, delicious. And I think it's great. For pizza, again, I like that. I like the Plant Strong Pizza Organic Kit because the crust, it doesn't have any oil and has 4 grams of fiber. So those would be my favorites.
We got a question. Did you try the Bonza chickpea pasta?
I have. I do recommend this to my patients. I don't do it as much. For me, I think it's steering towards a little bit more processing than I personally prefer to do. I would honestly rather do like rice and open a can of beans, but I do use them. And I will tell you the Bonza pasta. So I have found that the rigatoni is the best in flavor. And it's great in some nice plant-based soups that can give you a little more substance if you're burned out on rice or quinoa or something like that. So I certainly have them in my pantry. I also love the Explore brand. I love that I can like throw out all these words. I think I'm okay to throw out brands. I have no disclosure. So I have no financial agreement with any of these companies. They're just things I have in my own pantry if you wanted to put a camera in my own house. But the Explore brand, it's like a black bean noodle. And there is 25 grams of protein in a serving and 11 grams of fiber. It's incredible. So, it's a really nice one. And you can put like steamed vegetables on it or whatnot. So great question.
So Dr. Dawn, you mentioned you haven't found an ideal bar. I'm curious where you land on Lara bars. They're date-based.
Mm-hmm. I do like them. In fact, that is the other one that I use, but there's not as much protein. And though I typically meet my protein requirement, if I know I'm going to miss a breakfast, and I usually want to get about 10 grams of protein with that Scout bar has 10 grams of protein, where the Lara bar doesn't have quite as much. So that would be my difference. But I do buy the Lara bars, so I do use those as well. Okay. It's just, I would rather do a date than the Lara bar, but it's kind of hard to carry dates with you. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, what I'll even do if I'm like going to a doctor's appointment for myself or something, is I will buy, some dehydrated, unsweetened, unsulfured fruit. And my favorite, I'm going to throw it out of store because I want this to be convenient for people, is Target actually has a whole section now of organic, no sulfur dioxide, unsweetened dried fruits. And so I love their apricots and I love the dried pears and the dried kiwi. They're great. And so if I have those though, I don't do them plain. I always have like 2 to 4 walnuts when I have it, and I'll do that instead of a bar. So I commonly do that myself. Or here's another thing. is I have a lot of folks, I had a patient today and she's like, I am a sugar addict. How can I break this hack? Here's a great way, or break this addiction. So here's a good hack, is what I should say, is if you take a medjool date, this is so delicious, and you cut it in half and you put a pecan in it. It tastes just like caramel. You will never know the difference. So if you're craving sugary stuff, you're still getting sugar, because sugar is kind of sugar, but at least you're doing it with fiber and you're doing it with other nutrients that are in it. So you're still getting food value versus like a processed, white sugar dessert that's going to have a lot of other probable junk in it. So that date with the nut in it is really delicious.
Okay, those are really good. I'm writing all these down.
Yeah.
This is why it helps. I tell doctors, if you're not eating this lifestyle yourself, how do you counsel people? Because, you have to be in the lifestyle and you're like, I know when I'm craving something sweet, what do I want? So my Mary's crackers, little nut butter. Oh, make sure your nut butter has no oil in it, because so many nut butters are so unhealthy. I typically like the ones that are ground itself. And if you're trying to lose weight, you want to be very, 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 very careful of the nut butter. So do a really thin layer when you do it, and then put those few cherries on top. It's just delicious. It's the best thing you'll ever do. So good.
Yeah. Heather, I think you're up.
Okay, so we're really pretty much at time. So what I'd like to do is have you let us know what your passion project is, and is there a place where you want us to send people so that they can follow up with you, or at least know what you're up to, anything to get people involved. What's your passion project? What do you want people to know?
So I have a few passion projects. This is one of them. Thank you for inviting me. I love being able to talk to people I don't otherwise get to talk to, who may not be my patient, to be able to spread the word of how important it matters how you live, and especially how you eat healthy to feel good and to help fight off these diseases and then keep diseases away. Number one. Number two is training the residents. It is so important to me, and seeing my patients. So my work is it's like my love. I love everything I do with work. So those are very important. Other exciting things. One very exciting thing is I'm part of the steering committee for Blue Zones Jacksonville, and I'm so excited.
You are. That's so exciting. I knew
Awesome.
it's here. Yeah, awesome.
So excited. Blue Zones, for those of you who don't know, are the places around the world where people live to be 100. So imagine me, when I heard this, I was like, oh, I'm so excited. It's like my dream job. So, but we get to go into the zip codes around Jacksonville where these people just don't have as much exposure and ability to flourish. So we get to help them, optimize the grocery stores and optimize the nutrition in the schools, and try to get safe paths so they can walk, and teach them about purposeful living and meaning in life. And just so tickled and excited to be able to be a part of that particular program. And then, again, like I said, doing this really incredible, exciting research at Mayo Clinic to just prove why whole food plant-based nutrition matters, and to get this high quality data out there, like these other doctors have done all these years, and to carry on that torch. So yeah, I have a lot of passion projects.
Yeah, that is awesome.
That is
So we did have one question. Do you see patients in your lifestyle medicine practice that don't have breast cancer?
So great question. So at this time, I am a little bit limited because we have such a demand for the women with breast cancer, but I do see patients who are at a high risk for breast cancer, which is a pretty high percentage, or someone who is requiring disease reversal, particularly for coronary artery disease. I will. So, it's basically by exception. If you call Mayo Clinic and if you ask, it's kind of difficult to do this. I'm trying to think. If you were to call and register as a patient for Mayo Clinic, and you were to ask, they generally will send a message to me, and I can check and see how the access looks. But it's basically because we have so many sick cancer patients, and I'm the only one that's doing it right now, but we can absolutely see if it's possible. And like I said, I have other colleagues that do this as well, and I have a great nutritionist that helps us also. So there's a lot of way to help you with that. So just give us a call, or I'm on social media, so you can always, I don't like people to send their private information, but if you felt comfortable in a private message, just letting us know what your issue is, and then I can kind of guide you if it's a definite, we can get you in, or it's going to be a long wait to make that happen. Okay. But good news is, training these residents, there's going to be a bunch of not just me, I'm not, but a bunch of people that have the same passion and interest, because these residents are so excited. It's very awesome to see it. And they're brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah, that is so exciting. Oh my gosh. Oh, well, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, shoot. Do we have any last questions? Heather, anything you want to close on?
No, this has been amazing. I could tell we could like Dawn and I were talking about how we wanted this to be 2 hours. Yeah, we could talk forever, but thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule and your evening. Not just you, Dr. Dawn, but everyone else. Thank you for joining us. And I put my email in the chat. Dawn, maybe you can put your email in the chat. And if y'all have any questions, we can forward it on to Dr. Dawn. And of course, just reach out to Dawn and I if you guys need anything. We will have the link up to the replay in the next few days. And next month is Dr. Michael Young. I believe he's a primary care physician. And so make sure you go in there, register, and tell everybody to register so we can have really great crowd today. So thank you guys for joining us.
And whoever had that question about being a patient at Mayo, that's a great, I didn't even think of my email in chat. So email me, that's gonna be the safest thing. I'd much rather that than social media. So just email me and we'll figure it out. I can usually make it happen. It's not a problem because I'd love to see everyone. I just wanna make sure that it fits and that I'm the right person for you. Because there's some certain disease states that I have a colleague that I think is a little bit better, but I'd love to know what your goal is. All right.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Dr. Dawn. Thank you.
Guys. This is awesome. Thanks for the invite. Enjoyed it. I'm going to go eat my bean burger.
Okay, good. And I will, for anybody that wants to know the link for next month, I will be sending that out as well. So thank you so much. And yeah, enjoy your bean burger. And Dr. Dawn, I can't wait to talk to you soon, hopefully.
Thank you.
And thank you for your website. Your website's awesome. I refer all my patients to it. Resource. So strong work. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody. Let me stop recording.